Welcome to the Weak Links episode. This is something that ATG focuses on a lot. Keegan will start us off with this topic.
Weak links. The biggest weak link that I see for coaches, for athletes, for everyone is low expectations of self. So where this shows up in the training is you accept pain and you're just like, I'm just going to have this pain forever and this is it. Or I'm just going to be slow. These were two of the things that I accepted about myself. My father actually told me at one stage, like, you're always going to be slow, but at least you can have good endurance. And he was, someone who's in professional sports. And that was the dominant paradigm at the time, that speed is genetic and you're not fast, so you're not going to be fast. And I was like 15 at the time. I'd barely, started going through puberty. And then a few years later, I had discovered strength training and I became one of the fastest at the state level, pushing for national teams. And it was through weight training. And so that's why I have so much belief in weight training. But unfortunately, I didn't understand concepts like building strength from the ground up. I didn't understand concepts like, bringing massive blood flow into an area with a short range, long range. I was buying into some of the philosophy of don't stretch because it's going to make you slower. People were talking about those concepts way back in those days as well. It's, over 20 years ago. But people were saying if your muscles get tighter, then you're going to be faster. You're going to be more elastic. And so that definitely contributed to the tendon problems that I had. I had my first tendon issue at 10 years old, and I pretty much just accepted I'm always going to have tendon issues. I had the one in the heel, in the growth plate of the heel. I had that for years, and then knees. And so I would say the biggest thing that needs to change, and the thing that I love most about working with athletes and working with coaches, is just looking at, well, what is the reality? What are the facts about the situation? And then how can we make an impact on that? Like, how can we increase the expectations for the future? And I think that's what ATG has done for so many people is change the expectation, where the expectation now is to be able to train full out, to be able to go to dunk practice and put everything into every jump. That change in expectations for me is the biggest thing. And then everything in terms of the details, like the obstacle has to give way once you've chosen the outcome that you want for the future. So that's the opener for me.
That's amazing. So basically, nothing has to just stay a weak link. If you're just not a good jumper, if you have weak quads, if you have tight ham, nothing has to just stay a weak link. And then Marcel will go next. And Marcel is, I would really say, the king of no weak links in ATG. Like, he's the only person I've seen with my own eyes do, trap 3 raises with the weight that Charles Poliquin says you should actually be able to do. And as a tennis player, that's his background. He's really tried to be a master of not just the legs. Like, I can just jump and dunk and be happy, but he has to have it all. So Marcel, what's your opinion on this whole subject of weak links? I mean, heck, you've knocked them all out in yourself. So what's going on here?
So I came to you as a client initially to play tennis professionally, and I did so for about 2 years. And tennis is a very rotational sport. So at least for me as a tennis player specifically, I favored my forehand a lot. And the serve is done with your predominant hand. You're serving hundreds of times in a match. So you really develop one side over the other a lot more. And to this day, we did a little exercise on the last L2 where we had a baseball player, and Ben Clarefield instructed all the coaches that were attending to actually feel his spinal erectors. And you could tell from all the rotation of his throwing and his batting, one side was clearly more developed than the other. And so
this is what goes on at the L2, is feeling of the erectors is what I'm getting here.
Not all the time. But when we have the opportunity to give someone full understanding on what it means to be in balance, we will take advantage. As long as the other person's willing, let's just say that.
But it's so true that in a sport like tennis, the imbalances are insane. So go on.
Right. So I came to you with quite a lot of imbalances. My right arm was a lot more developed than my left. My, left side was a lot weaker than my right, legs as well. So the information that I'm sure Ben Clarefield's going to talk about a lot, because he worked the most out of all of us with Charles Poliquin, is we have this information that was presented by him in a way that if you put the structures as close to balance as possible, your athletic expression improves. And so me having so many imbalances when I started, that became a real focus to me just as an athlete. I wanted to get as athletic as possible. So I had to address all my weak links because there were many. And I just sort of obsessed with this over the course of these 5 years. And I've done pretty well now to even things out. But with this approach of attacking areas, which, and by attacking, I just mean like training and focusing on these areas that aren't up to par as other areas in the body and bringing them to balance, it really allows you to be more athletic. And for me on the court, and all of my issues as an athlete resolved as a result. So that's been something that's been highlighted in ATG since the beginning, addressing these weak areas. And I've seen, not just within myself, but the people that do apply it to themselves and work on these different muscles that maybe were neglected over time, their athleticism also improves. So this topic of addressing weak links is something that will benefit a lot of people if they come to an understanding of it, and hopefully they can improve their athleticism as well.
Sweet. So Ben Clarefield, out of all of us, worked the most directly with Charles Poliquin, and Charles introduced this idea of structural balance. It's not just being able to bench, squat, and deadlift. There's other lifts, and you don't just do them to just do a few reps at the end of a workout. Like, you actually have to be a certain amount of strength relative to your main lifts. So Ben Clarefield, you want to help introduce this topic?
Absolutely. I think I'm going to outline a few layers of how we get to this. And I think the most important thing is connected to what Keegan said, which I love, which is we have to have a paradigmatic approach where we believe, and we can listen to our athletes and clients that believe in this core tenet, which is the ability that we can change, that we can take something and with intellectual honesty and a coach's eye or an athlete's eye that can see a weak link, address it by saying these three things are things you need to work on, and they're not up to par. And if we work on them, aka attack them and train them, they will be not only up to par but beyond par. So that's the magic of it. So these are the layers. First, you have to believe you can change. Second, you have to have an intellectual honesty and a correct eye that can address and assess those things. And then after that, you have to have a plan of how we will address those things and find those weak links. So the magic of what Charles showed me, and we've, Ben and I, and we've worked on this and put it in a way that is, in some ways accessible to more people, with layers of abilities, of adequate to athletic to freakish. And I think the magic of what Charles taught me was, you're not so special. A knee is just a knee. You're not, and we talked about this in the other, podcast where we discussed people's identities of being, I'm a bad knee person, I'm a bad back person. Keegan as an athlete was, well, I'm a slow and not so strong, but hey, I can keep on coming because I have endurance. These definitional things that we do that lock us into patterns that seem to be that it's like the fates have given us that and there's nothing we can do about that. So we have to break that. And the way we break that is we have these numbers. So we have these numbers that can start to be tools where we can address those things that are not accordingly balanced with the other things. And that's the really cool thing about ATG and what we've done, which is with the various methodologies with the short range, long range, and being very, very almost religious about actually taking the weak link stuff seriously. And I think, and on the flip side, I'll just say is there's a beyond that where people start to realize, like, no one would ever say on the planet that you're a weak knee guy, Ben.
Yeah.
But you were, but you were.
Yeah.
So that definitional nature of who you were, you've actually changed that. You're not that. You're the opposite of that. You are Mr. Knee Guy, literally the knee guy, where it's the most bulletproof, amazing knees, call it what you will, whatever, superlatives we want to call it. We could say your knees are pretty goddamn good, but you have to do exactly what I outlined. You have to believe that there's a possibility for change, assess and address them properly, and then follow the recipe with the various numbers and realize that you're not so special. And then you can surpass these things. And the same thing with Keegan. Keegan's mobility and his strength, like, it's phenomenal. Marcel, I've trained with Marcel. It's phenomenal with Ben. Now, I look forward to the day where we can train with Keegan. For myself, I came at it with blown out knees. Like Charles Poliquin said, these are the numbers you have to chase so that you do that. And by doing that, I also so happen to have done pretty good things with my upper body, just following the numbers that Charles taught me. So I think that's the thing. And I think the thing is that what our numbers allow people to do, the way we've built it, is that people follow that, and it actually allows them to change their conception of themselves. And then they look at the numbers, and there's an objective number out there. Again, we did it, and we're putting it together in a way that, is it arbitrary? It's not arbitrary. It follows Charles, and we've seen various data points that we have so that we put together the recipe or the plan. Are there other ways of doing it? Of course, but we think our recipe is pretty good. So you plug in what your weak link is, and at some point, people realize that they've come and they've had knee surgeries. And I always ask in the L2s and all that kind of stuff, the ATG camps, who's had knee surgery? And more often than not, it's more than half the people have had a knee surgery. But you wouldn't know it without they move. But in their head, I've had to talk to them and coach them through that. Marcel and I had to do that. And Ben is, hey, look, you're not a bad knee person. Your knees are good now. Actually, they're really good. Actually, they're in the top, 0.001% in the world of what they're capable of. But a lot of people still have this conception that they're bad knee people, and they don't transition to the next weak link. So a lot of the ATG coaches that we've coached, Marcel, I think you'll notice this, their split squats are phenomenal. The weights that they can lift on the split squats are phenomenal, but their squats are garbage. Not range of motion, but they're weak on that, because in their head, they've obsessed on the thing that they're not good at. But with the calculator, they can say, oh, my split squats are adequate for now. Next, I have to go and pursue the other thing that I'm weak on. And you can continually do that, but allows for intellectual honesty and a certain objectivism that doesn't allow you to just do the random thing that you think you are. Or on the flip side, I'm going to finish with this for this long-winded point, my apologies. You can get people to start to realize that they shouldn't obsess only over the thing that they like to do, that they should start working on the things that they need to do. And that's, I think, great coaching. Great coaching is not just doing the thing that your client or athlete wants to do, it's doing the thing that they need. And this metric and this tool set that we have, that what we're doing, we built it, we're building it, is an ability for a coach to say, hey, look, I know you like this thing over there, and we're not going to take it out, but it's now time to address this thing because that's going to be better for you. And that's value, I think, in a way that I don't think a lot of programs do. A lot of people just give the person what they want or random other stuff. Anyway, that's, sorry for that long-winded, but I wanted to outline the layering.
That's the point of a podcast, is to be long. This goes so much deeper than just a 60-second social media video. So for me, I think of weak links in the first layer just being, we have to go on the idea that the human body was made to work right. That doesn't mean it's going to be just life in the clouds, but a human body wasn't designed to just, oh yeah, this body just has jumper's knee. This body will just never, other bodies will jump. This body won't jump. Well, why? What's the difference here? What's the weak link going into that jump? Or someone who just run, and they have runner's knee. And then we see that having them like, oh my gosh, I just started backward sledding and my knee pain of 6 years went away. That's cool. But that's really just the first layer, is the idea that you're not just destined to have bad knees. There's certain missing things. So like, what's being done, what's been done on this body, and then what are the missing sort of opposites, the weak link. So that's where the weak link, bringing up the weak link, the first layer to me is just opening the door to being able to perform without pain. We say pain free sets the gains free. And you guys have all gotten to train with me in person and see that it's not like I just do this for one video and then I'm like, all right, I'm out, guys. I got to rest the rest of the week. We're actually in person. We're a lot crazier actually than what you see online. Like we're like basketball. And then the next day, like Ben Clairfield and I had to teach, and Marcel had to teach 6 squat seminars, play basketball, throwing down jams on the weekend, and then squat another 6 times in 2 days. So Ben Clairfield had knee surgeries. I had knee surgeries. We squatted 12 times in 6 days. And in between that, I'm throwing down dunks as if nothing's ever happened to my knees. That comes from the first layer being just training the opposites of the jump, the weak links of the jump. But the next layer then going into, well, not only can you perform like the people out there performing, but why do some people run faster? Why do some people jump higher? So to me, this is the next layer of it. If you look at all the sprinters line up for the 100 meters at the Olympics, they're pretty dang similar. So why did I grow up thinking that you can't teach speed? Well, those bodies are pretty similar. Meanwhile, every good powerlifting coach, if you went to them, they're not going to look at an able-bodied person and say, sorry, you're never going to bench more than 135 pounds. Never. A good powerlifting coach is going to know how to make you stronger. And to me, that's kind of where the strength training industry left off for sports performance, and has gone down chasing a lot of butterflies and random drills, and sometimes just sticking with the powerlifting stuff. but not coming up with the system of what if you want to throw harder without your shoulder breaking down and throw faster? What if you want to run faster? What if you want to jump higher? What if you want to jump higher off one foot? What if you want to jump higher from a standstill? So this to me is where the next point of weak links comes in, is that you can train those things. That doesn't mean I'm going to be Usain Bolt, but I can be more like Usain Bolt just through strength training and just by mimicking the weak links that I would have compared to that body. So if I took my body naturally compared to Usain Bolt's, instantly you're going to see a huge difference in the hamstrings. And that's not going to be covered just with the bench squat deadlift. I'm not going to become more like Usain Bolt just with the bench squat deadlift. Not to mention, if you look at his upper body, well, if I'm just pressing here all the time, his body is built much more with shoulders. And then you look back at Charles Poliquin's shoulder numbers and you have that realization, wow, less than 1% of the guys in the gym would be able to do Charles Poliquin's shoulder numbers, probably less than 1% of 1%. So it's still just strength training, but you're now able to put in and create a body that can do the activities it wants to do without breaking down, and that has potential to get a lot more athletic. So I think of the weak links with extreme optimism, that even someone who thinks they're slow or thinks they can't jump or these kind of things, you can break down why. And do you just not have the juice to jump, or do your knees break down when you jump, or both? You can handle both of those things with measurements. So maybe as we go through again now, maybe we can break down some of our favorite measurements. And it could be from our simple stuff. Like, to give a quick background, here's my long-winded one, is in ATG, we think of things as certain standards. An example would be like, for your rotator cuff, like 10% of your body weight. That's because if I'm training a baseball player who's had a shoulder surgery and thinks they'll never throw again, and if their bench press is totally pathetic, then being structurally balanced to that pathetic bench press doesn't necessarily allow them to throw. So like for a male body, 10% of your body weight, you should be able to do 8 strict reps, 4 seconds down. Most people can't do that when they start, but as we've seen, most people can definitely get there and beyond. But now as you go beyond, that's where we start to apply structural balance. Like, we're not trying to just balance up someone weak on this side versus weak. I don't want to balance weak quads versus weak hamstrings. That's why we have standards, just to ensure like that there are no weak or tight links in the body. From that basis, now if you're going to go farther, now you might have to have even more responsibility to understand structural balance numbers. So that's kind of the background. And now with all of us, you could go over maybe some of the things you've done in your own body or with athletes that apply to this concept of weak links. But in terms of the first round, we kind of went over it more theoretically, but maybe now just like some more specific numbers that we've used.
10 by 10 squat is a nice one. You know, that's something that Charles popularized. I don't like timing rest periods. So, you know, I came up with the dense thing. I think it makes more sense. CrossFit really brought it to the world, the idea of not timing rest periods, but timing the time between the start of sets rather than, you know, and I like that method. So the 10 by 10 squat on the minute is a nice one. It's one to transform your body, mind, and soul.
And you're talking about full squats, meaning you're correcting the weakness below parallel.
Yeah, it corrects many weaknesses. It corrects the weakness of thinking that you're training hard when you're not really training hard as well. Once you get serious about 10 by 10 squats, then everything else falls into place and perspective. And there is that structural element to everything that we're talking about, but there's also the psychological element of the things like you've spoken about there. Like, I remember you doing 5 minutes of Nordics. I don't know if you still remember, but you did 5 minutes of Nordics when I
remember
came
you timed us. You kind of challenged and we got like 50 plus Nordics in 5 minutes or something.
I was like, man, what, like, I can't even imagine this. Like, who is this guy? I think I'd seen one athlete do like sketchy Nordics before I came to your gym. Like, I had, Trey Williams, who'd ran a 10-10, 100 meters. He could do, you know, some decent Nordics. And then I saw you banging out better reps than he was. And I was like, man, this is crazy. But a lot of people haven't trained super hard, and it is good to get that experience when you go to a training camp and you get with a coach and you train hard at stuff that is going to make you better. Like, anyone can just train hard and destroy themselves. I'm not talking about just doing, 5 hours of burpees. Like, that's got its place as well. But I really like the 10 by 10 squat as a leg builder, but also as something that gets you in touch with hard work. And so 50% of body weight on that 10 by 10 squat, flat loaded, same weight for all sets. 50% of body weight is like a really achievable level, but it means you've got a good level of baseline conditioning. Like if the average, dad or 16-year-old athlete here is sort of looking at a target of sort of getting in the game, then I think half body weight is a place to go to. 2/3 is pretty good. 3/4 is you're actually trained at that point. Like it's decent. If you can do body weight for 10 by 10 on the minute, then you're in a pretty good place in terms of conditioning, and you're going to find that your physique changes as you do that. A lot of people talk about physique being led by diet. Just get your diet right and your body will look good. In my experience, when you increase strength and tolerance to volume, then your body will transform. And I think you've seen that with the dense program. Like so many people have had ridiculously good body transformations with dense, and the 10 by 10 is a basis for that. It's also quite a safe way to get a lot of volume into the knees and quads. It can be therapeutic because there's so much volume.
And particularly for beginners, we use the slant board. And this was key concept of applying classic Charles Poliquin 10 sets, but getting it in 10 minutes on the slant board is a classic dense workout, and people grow VMOs on that. But I think Keegan just brought up a really huge point, and that's why I love these podcasts. They bring up important points. Is there's a lot of different ways you could describe ATG, but a really good way he just described, which is basically training your weak links hard, not just like, oh, now I have to do this band drill in the corner no, like training your weak links hard. That's why he was saying when he came into ATG to train with me and visited Florida, like all of us could do Nordics and our whole staff is like dunking machines. Now, we won't win records right now for bench squat deadlift, but we're almost all world-class strong in these smaller areas, mostly because we became really passionate about playing pain-free. But I think this is good to get into the numbers because the idea is not to have a weak bench squat deadlift. I would suggest looking up Adon Lopez, who we'll definitely have on the podcast, Bulletproof Backman. We're super tight with him. And he just cleaned 400 pounds the other day. And he's like probably 6'3", 225 shredded, cleaned 400 pounds, deadlift 600 plus pounds. Keegan's hitting his highest squats ever. Ben Clarefield is squatting like double body weight ass to grass as how old are you, Ben?
Oh, 42.
42, like ass to grass, double body weight is insane. Behind the neck presses, like killer weight, dips in chin. Super. Marcel, what's your weighted chin up number?
For 6, I'm doing 90 pounds. For a single, I'm
and he does strict reps, strict 6 reps, half body weight loaded chin ups.
For a single, I'm also doing 154 pounds.
And if I had a gun to your head, how much would you rotate her for 8 reps?
Gun to my head, between 15 to 20%.
Right.
So I would make it happen. I would make it happen.
You're talking like upper 1% of the 1% of the 1% in rotator cuff strength. So the point is that I'm not ATG. I'm just an example. And I'm really happy to be able, I want to be able to dunk forever. And I think when I push myself to the limit, I actually have much higher strength levels than I used to, even on brute force. At Mark Bell's gym, he set up like a trap bar thing, which is of course easier, but I did 475 pounds and it's not an exercise that I train. I'm sure that I wouldn't have been near that with my legs and back prior to ATG. So I really love what came out of this already is that ATG means even training your weak links hard, but it doesn't mean not being strong in the other stuff. And in fact, the people who push the other stuff, we see them, the bobsledders we train, they break their power clean records. They break their squat records. So it can actually be ATG. Training your weak links hard can open up doors of whatever physical pursuit you're trying to have, which I see for Keegan is amazing how he's squatting as he's getting older, running in person. He was jumping with us, grabbing the rim. So I guess we go to Marcel now, but maybe you can go into this. I like where this is going is that it's not like, yes, I have my tib bar here and it helps illustrate what a weak link is, but this is not the extent of what ATG is. So go ahead, Marcel.
So what's interesting, I want to touch on the topic that you mentioned earlier in the podcast, which is that, the body was designed pretty correctly. And it's just that we happen to give it a stimulus in which it tends to go off balance. So we address weak links, right? And people maybe think like, oh, an external rotator, you're only going to push about 20 pounds, 15 pounds, thereabouts. But what ends up happening is that when you start to address these weak links, the body starts to get imbalanced in such a way that now you can express more in your stronger lifts, because all of the supporting structures in the area tend to then contribute to the lift in the way that they're supposed to. So as you get your weak links stronger, you then start to notice, oh wait, my squat's going up and I haven't been squatting. Or, you start to address things in the upper body and like, oh, my bench press is going up, but I haven't been bench pressing, which Charles Poliquin did this all the time. He would write programs for bench pressing and they would never bench press.
In the first phase.
Exactly. So like for me, I would have to say I've been really dialed in addressing my weak links probably the past year and a half. And what I find is as I get one weak link addressed, I then start to see improvements in other lifts. And Ben Clearfield was mentioning it to me like, hey, your squat's looking a lot tighter. You're holding your position a lot better. I squat once a week, but what I've been addressing, let's say specifically in this example, I've been addressing my lower back, which historically, has been weaker than my legs. My back extension was weak. My seated good morning was trash. My RDL was garbage. So now I'm addressing these areas and it's translating to a even better squat. So I want to encourage people to focus on addressing these weak links because their return is such that it supports your strong lifts as well, and with very minimal input into the strong lift. So that's really what's been working for me this past year and a half, is that by dogmatically just going into the gym with the mentality of I'm going to attack these weak areas as much as I don't want to face them, I then get a lot of benefit back in other stronger areas. And that's what I've been doing the past year and a half, really like focusing on.
Beautiful. Clarfield?
Yeah, and I think that's the realization. I think, this conversation is fundamentally about us having lived and done the process and seeing the benefits of the recipe and saying, hey, put off that thing that you really like because you're good at and do these things that you might not like and that you're not so good at. And we promise that in the future, that thing that you like will be even better. But it's a hard psychological pill to swallow, right? It's like anything. It's like deferred gratification. And at the end of the day, I say this, what we sell, what we coach, what we teach is the anti-modern pill. It's the opposite of the one-click Amazon, show up, get it right now type thing. We say, hey, I was in the car with Ben, and he was saying, like everyone thinks that my story is really cool. And it's true. Your story is really cool. It's like, and anyone can do it. What you really need to do is you need to make sure that you have blasted knees, have 3 knee surgeries, and then spend 8 years trying to master these things that you really suck at. Go ahead. Go put that on social media and see your account blow up. But you can't fake that, right? Like that's the intellectual honesty where you say, I really suck at these things. I am going to figure out how much I suck and be brutally honest with myself, with the coach's eye or with help. And you got help from Charles and then you saw it and did it. He says, this is where you suck. This is where you can do better. Say, okay, I'm going to spend however long it takes to perfect those things so that now what a magical gift you've given yourself by pursuing this, and saying, okay, now those weak links that were the bane of my existence and definitional are now things that everyone looks at me and I'm world famous for. What a magical, amazing thing. And that's what we're sort of saying. And in many different ways, hey, look, we have a recipe. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's a pretty good one that's helped all of us and helped a ton of different athletes and clients and old, young, general population, super athletes, whatever, world famous, super rich, poor, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And we're saying, look through this lens, apply these methods with intellectual honesty, and the investment in it and the dividends that you get are exponentially more than just working on the fun stuff you like. And I guess that's the message. And that's, I don't know. I think it's pretty magical, but I think it's also a lesson that sort of carries to other things in life too. Address the things that you're garbage at, your weak links, and really magical things happen exponentially. And I think the other thing that Keegan made mention with the body composition stuff, we're not huge at ATG. Ben's done this where he says, look, like, thank the Lord, we're in the movement game, where we can say, hey, look, like, we're not saying, first of all, we all agree movement is great. Secondarily, we say, hey, look, if you've got structural stuff, we think our way is better than other ways, whatever. But like, we're not yelling off the rooftops. We're just saying, hey, try our way, cool. The thing that we don't push as hard on, and I know Ben's talked about this a lot, is like, we're not so religious about the nutrition. We all have opinions. We know what works for us, and we know what works for a lot of significant athletes and clients, but we're not wading through that one. That's not the war that, none of us are dying on the hill of nutrition. People can ask us, we have opinions. I mean, we all do. And I think we're all on a similar path of what we think a good prescription should be, from a optimality in life. And again, there's exceptions. However, I think Keegan's point about the body composition is actually an interesting weak link point. And that's something I learned from Charles, is if you get someone leaner, if you get an athlete leaner, they will be faster and more explosive. And I think part of your transformation, Ben, is that too. But I think it's secondary. It's not that you were trying to get lean. It's that you were trying to be structurally sound, and by working really hard. And I think that's the thing. It's we lean into our weak links. Okay, we're going to dial in on nutrition too. And oh my God, look, there's less friction between the muscle cells. That's from my understanding. And look at that, you move better. There's less inflammation, this kind of stuff. And I think Keegan's a huge example. Marcel's got a great physique. You guys all have great physiques. You guys inspire me. And it's one of those things that I think Keegan's right, is that, is it all nutrition? No, it's a lot nutrition. But I actually think there's much more in movement and blood flow and, quote unquote, hypertrophic gains that we get from hitting weak links and hitting muscle groups that most people neglect, that then allows you to do harder work on the bigger things in a way that you're pain-free and you're not fighting your own body. And I think that's an interesting sort of secondary, but it's also a weak link, because I think if we think about it, we all know there's an obesity epidemic, especially in the West and a lot of places in the world, and moving in a way. And I think I was having this discussion. I think I was talking to a lot of the coaches in the camps and saying, sometimes you see people post videos of someone doing a Patrick step up very, very low, and the person is pretty obese. And if you were to critique our system, you'd say, what are you doing? This person is clearly obese. They don't need a step up. That's so metabolically not challenging that's not the best use of that person's time. My flip, though, is, however, to say, I beg to differ, because if that person's in pain, of course, we're going to deal with nutrition if that person is paying us, in whatever gentle coaching way we can, and whatever levels that we can or not. And I'm not saying there's like a one size fits all type thing. However, making that person's tendon, ligament, short range, that kind of stuff work better, and then they're in less pain in their knees, means that we can then start to challenge them and push them harder with the bigger stuff. So I think one of those things is, it's like, no, absolutely destroy that person. They need to lose fat as possible. These things take time. So I think helping people's joints feel better will allow for long-term success on these bigger things, which is a weak link that, I think everyone's dealing with on different levels from a body composition point of view. But I think it's there in ATG, but we don't yell it from the rooftops. It's sort of a, hey, look, like, if your joints feel better, you can start pushing harder and you can start making better choices nutritionally, because look at these wonderful things. You're not in as much pain. And we've seen some really significant transformations actually with a lot of our coaches, where their feelings of pain subside because of the movements they're doing. And then they get motivated to actually clean up their nutrition, and wonderful things happen on that aspect too. So I think it's a really cool thing that there's a cascade. We focus on the joint first, and then other magical things can happen.
Yeah. And if the body doesn't break down, you just wind up with a more active lifestyle. Yeah. Let's go for a walk tonight instead of taking the car. I just think it shifts the rest of your life, more active lifestyle. So my conclusion on this topic, you're not doomed to be the bad knee guy. You're not doomed to be the slow person, but you're going to get gains relative to how hard you work at your weakest links. So this is a different concept, and it may sound bad to say you're going to have to work hard. The higher I want to jump, the harder I'm going to have to work at my weak links. But I feel way better when I'm working hard. And I absolutely loathe doing quote unquote rehab exercises where I have no measurement. I'm not working hard. So I think that's pretty cool. You're not doomed to be the bad knee guy or the bad back guy or the bad shoulder guy or the bad Achilles guy. You're not doomed to be the unathletic one. And you're not doomed. Maybe you're not too old. This stuff becomes so impactful now. The fact, like the amount of ATGers who are getting more athletic in 30s and 40s is absurd. To me, that's the coolest aspect of the whole thing, is the fact that it's not just about winning a championship when you're 18. It could help. It could definitely help. We've seen it with high school sports teams. My football team I coach, we had the most D1 scholarships in America per player. But I don't really care about that as much as the fact of that person being able to not break down in their 40s and be active with their kids. Not to mention how fun it is just to be able to be still a quality physical specimen as we get older. So that's my conclusion, is that this whole weak links concept makes life a lot more. I mean, this is a weird journey of life. So might as well do it, with a more capable body. And the weak links concept gives us some shit we can work hard at. So Keegan, what's your conclusion on this?
You definitely nailed a lot of what I really believe in here, and that expectation of excellence, expectation of athleticism for the long term. If you have that, then you're going to solve it. You're going to solve it one way or another. And I think that's what we all need. We need to aim higher. If you look back even 50 years ago, if you've seen the footage from the JFK time of the physical camps, and you see young man after young man looking extremely athletic, there's no reason we can't, go back to those times or create a new future of extremely athletic men. I think that's what we need to be aiming for. And Athletic Truth and what you've done, your transformation, Ben, and the program that you put together has done more for man's athleticism than anything of the modern era. It's just getting started. And I think it's on every coach to own this in their own way and to bring more people along, to have this expectation of athleticism become a normal thing for men again, not to expect to be like Homer Simpson. We've been confronted, and almost all the sitcoms have this Homer Simpson type character, or the Al Bundy or whatever it is. Let's leave that behind and let's replace that with this expectation for athleticism. And that means confronting the weak links. And sometimes that means making more money or making more time for yourself, or, there's other areas of weak links that you've encouraged us to make changes in as well, Ben. The pornography and the entertainment and the junk food, these are all things that you've set examples for thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of men to say, well, what should I do with this? These are weak links as well. So yes, we want to have these strong hips and strong shoulders and get ourselves running and dunking and experiencing the excellence of that. But it can be a life philosophy to take on those weak links and not be afraid to own the challenges that we've had in the past, and to move past them. Like, I think that's if anyone takes that out of today's podcast, then the world's becoming a better place.
That's huge. I love that. Marcel?
So I want to leave this podcast with people feeling very motivated to attack their weak links. Maybe people have the mentality.
You start showing us some rotators right now, and they'll leave just like, God, I gotta get to this.
Yeah. So, but like more along the lines of, a lot of maybe people take the mentality of like, if I'm addressing weak links, I'm going to be lifting small weights. I consider myself to have a level of strength that is well beyond the norm. And addressing my weak links, not only does it make me stronger in those areas, but it allows me to take tougher and harder training and have my body properly take it on and even get more physiological adaptations from it. It's not just addressing the weak links. You do that, and then it effectively allows you to take on more advanced training with less chance of injury and better physiological adaptations. So go out there, attack these weak links. It's not just going to get the weak links stronger. It's going to give you your ability to become even more athletic, a bigger, which you've covered, reserve of bulletproofing, and you'll be able to get even stronger than before.
Heck yeah. That's a great closing point, is we're training to be harder to break. And this is why I'm not ATG. but I am damn hard to break on a basketball court, and I can play hard. I know I can play harder, get lower, you know, and do more without breaking down compared to 99% of basketball players. And for me, that, I mean, how could I ever ask for that from training? It's amazing that I can get that from just strength training alone, plus basketball. But people should look into more stories of ATG, and so many more of the stories of ATG will come out. So that's a killer point. Your guys' conclusions are amazing. Clairfield, send us home. What are you got?
I think the magic of the structural balance and these ideas that you can confront weak links with an actual recipe and a plan that's, you know, to a certain extent external to your own feelings and is objective, is kind of a magical gift. I think the thing to think about that I like to tell people is you're not so special. And we're not so, none of us are that special. We are special emotionally or psychologically or intellectually and all that fun stuff. But from a physiological point of view, a knee's a knee, a shoulder's a shoulder. No one's that special. As long as you find where it is that you need to address how weak or how strong something is, it's just, I think that sort of takes the mystery out of it and says, oh, this is where I am. Looking at where you are on the spectrum of weak to strong on every joint or every, you know, metric, then what you can do is that you can say, oh, I'm here, cool. And then you can progress and then magical things happen. But realizing that you're not so special, back to this identity thing. I'm a knee person. I'm a bad knee person. I'm a bad back person. Oh, I have bad shoulders. Like, no, as of now, this is where you are. And then on it and progress, you can become someone that doesn't remember that you have shoulder issues. And guess what? You'll have to think about yourself from a different identity point of view. And so I think there's magic in realizing that you're not so special. A joint's a joint, and it's just math. So just figuring out where you are on the spectrum and follow the recipe, and really great things happen. It's not such a big deal. And I think that's the cool thing about it. It's a really big deal by making it not such a big deal.
I love it. So from Keegan, weak links is a philosophy for life. From Marcel, bringing up your weakest link makes it harder to break you. And from Ben Clairfield, you are not special. That's all, folks. We'll see you next time.